Hey everybody, it's James. Welcome to the Comedypreneur Show. And today we have an amazing guest for you. This guy is so cool. He has a talk show that's on YouTube that I've been like binge watching. It's probably gonna feel creepy to him to like me to talk to him, but he's from New York. And if you know anything about New York comedians, they're a whole different breed than LA comedians. I've been watching Crashing a lot lately, so I'm like really into the New York scene. I've been there a few times, done stand up, but please welcome to the show the very funny, the very talented Mr. John Field. John, how you doing today?
Hello, how you doing?
Good. Glad to have you.
Yes.
um, so can you kind of give people a background? You go by America's Comic on like
Yeah.
Twitter and everything like that. First of all, where'd that come from? How'd that come up? That's kind of cool.
Back years ago when I first started in New York, I was doing an open mic, and it was one that was a bunch of people that we were all pretty good friends, and it was like a really positive community, and the host was really good. And when the comic was calling up that round of comedians, somebody like he called up a comic who was Colombian, so he called him Colombia's comic. And then he called up this other comic that was from Bangladesh or whatever. So he called him Bangladesh's comic, and then keeping the joke going, he called me up as America's comic. And then people started chanting USA, and I just kind of owned it. I kind of like self-aggrandizing. I think it just gives people a brand and a hat to kind of hang on and kind of an identity to kind of associate something with. So I like it. And I just like just the idea of owning the fact that I am America's comic, because it's just arrogant, and like, why am I of all people have ownership of this name, you know?
I love it actually though. It's such a cool, like, yeah, it's a little aggrandizing. It's a little like uh forward and like aggressive, but I think it's funny because like nobody would ever say that. Like, I mean, I know there's like Judah Freelander who says like he's the world's greatest, comic and whatever and all this stuff like that, and that's like silly, but like it's funny to do that. How long have you been doing stand up?
I've been doing it 8 years.
8 years. Awesome. And did you get started in New York, or did you move from somewhere, like start somewhere else and
I,
move to New York?
I started in Orlando, Florida, and I looked around my local club scene, and within 8 months, I realized I had to move to New York City. I just was not the guy that the local kingmaker in our scene would have liked or ever really at my level given much of an opportunity for. So I figured I might as well move to New York City now and get good. In the meantime, when I left, a lot of my peers who started out at the same time in the Orlando scene as me kind of saw the same situation. And what they ended up doing instead was establishing their own community inside of Orlando, Florida, and building what was, for I haven't kept track in a while, but there was a time where Orlando had like a really strong comedy scene. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine, Preacher Lawson, came out of
Yeah,
Orlando.
Preacher. I know him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Preacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome, right? He's like a great guy. That's so cool. So 8 years. So you in 8 months you started in Orlando, and then you decided I'm going to go big and go to New York. And then
Yeah.
what has that journey been like? Because New York is so different than LA. Have you been out here to do stand up at all?
I've never done that LA. It's always on
Dude,
my
come
bucket
out.
list, but
Come
I haven't
out,
been
man.
able to.
Let's do it.
I think it's been a weird arc of what New York City was. I mean, it's been like 8 years. I think when I first moved to New York City, this is kind of how I saw it, was the popular thing and like the really big thing was just to get on stage as much as possible, which is always a good practice for comics. But what people did was they looked at people like Mike Lawrence or Hannibal Buress was also coming up big at the same time. And they're like, oh, this guy was doing 15 open mics in a week. And that kind of became the cult of how success happens in New York City. And that was something that I got caught up into as well. And so I spent a lot of energy just kind of obsessively trying to get on stage as much as possible. And on one hand, that did lead to me, I think, getting skills as a comic that I'm happy with and a level of talent that can open certain doors for me. On the other hand, it also slowed me down a lot. Like, instead of just breathing for a second and thinking about the world around me and thinking about the structure of comedy around me and what works for me and what works for, say, the interests of the comedy clubs, I would just be working all the time, because it's this question of like, oh, why am I not on stage tonight? Why am I having a personal life? Somebody else is working twice as hard as me. And if hard work equals success in the way that we usually talk about success in comedy, then I'm denying myself success. And it took me a while. And it's just one of those weird things that only comes with maturity to kind of figure out like a really good work-life balance relationship. It took me a while to kind of figure out how to just slow down in a way that works for what I want as a comic and also what I want out of my life. And that's where my TV show came in, my community access show.
Yeah.
I think at the same time, like I was getting on stage a lot, I would get booked a certain amount and people would say that they liked me. And I got off stage and like I learned from, do you know Ken Miller over in Orlando or no?
No, I don't.
You don't have to. He knows Preacher. But I learned from him early on in comedy is like after a show, you hang around the door so people can say, hey, and then you can shake their hand and follow it up with what I would call now like a call to action. It's like, hey, if you like this, here's my CD or whatever. I realized that like these people would leave the door, they would say I did a great job, and then nothing would happen after that relationship. And so from there, I realized like I needed something to point people towards and to build towards. And that became originally a community access TV show. And then just generally it became a YouTube channel. And that's kind of, if I used lizard person marketing language, like that's at the end of my marketing funnel. It's basically what you try to sell people. Like if I was Coca-Cola, it would be a can of soda. Like all that marketing ends up to people buying a can of soda. My can of soda is my YouTube channel, and then my comedy, which is the center of what I want to do creatively, is the thing that leads people to the YouTube channel and justifies the YouTube channel. So it sounds like getting the cart before the horse, but one is built on the other.
No, I 100% agree. Like literally that's what happened in LA. I read every single book on comedy I possibly could. I talked to older comedians and wanted them to say, stay after the show, shake people's hands, talk to them, and then have something to offer them. And so the original podcast that I have that's been going for 170 or 180 episodes weekly was exactly that thing of something to give people. And then this is to give back to comedians so that they can kind of see a different view, see a different world, and hear from other people in their same experience. So I understand 100% where you're coming from. And is your next goal to do an album or a special or something like that?
I have this idea. I have a general idea of what I want to do. And I think I always trust myself as a general, I kind of think of it, Breaking Bad. You ever see that show?
Love that show.
The guy who wrote that show, they talked to him about how he had these great, like someone in Comic-Con or whatever asked him, he's like, how do you plan these storylines this far ahead? And he goes like, I don't. What I do is I look at what the characters have already done, and then I decide the next moment to do in the present, and I have a general plan of what I want things to lead to. That's kind of how I'm building my career. I'm kind of reading the room of right now, because to me, as a jokey thing, I always say like every 18 months, comedy completely changes. Like 6 years ago, if you were all about Vine was great and you could build a great platform on that, but now Vine is gone. Or Creek in the Cave in New York City was the greatest place to be until it kind of got a little lame and white supremacy. And so now it's not the place to go anymore. So for me, what my general plan is I'm still building my YouTube channel. I have, here comes a cat.
Yes, I love cats.
Very annoying. I plan on building my YouTube channel more. I'm going to do a couple more essays, and I have a build from that. I do want to do an album, and it's kind of weird and Bill Hicksy in the way that I was listening to his album the other day, and it had all these all the musical interludes. I'm like, I kind of can see a 2020 angle on executing that. I have a plan to build my YouTube channel. I'm being paid by an app to produce videos for them, and I'm going to be using that as a way to generate more interest into myself. And generally my midterm goal is to build up an email list, because I think that has really strong just marketing. It's just a very strong marketing tool to use that I think people don't really understand why it's strong. And so a lot of my strategies and a lot of the creative stuff I do is built around building that email list. So I'm doing like a creative event to get people to, it's going to be a short story jam that people will do in 24 hours. And it's going to be for charity. And it's going to be done through an email. And at the end of it, I'm going to have a call to action for people to check out my email list. Or also I'm taking some old essay I wrote like 10 years ago, and I'm updating it. So I barely have to do any work. I'm turning it into an ebook, and then I'm going to post it on some Reddit platform where it will attract attention. And then when people sign up for it, they'll get onto my email list. And then that becomes people who are just generally interested in what I have to go to. Yeah, I think
That's awesome.
I think the biggest thing that I'm kind of thinking of is reframing what I want out of comedy and what success is. There's a wrestler called David Starr. Do you know him?
Yeah, yeah.
You know? Yeah. So he considers himself, if in the audience you don't know, he's a wrestler who's never doing it for the big corporation wrestling. He considers himself a middle-class wrestler, and he's just making a decent $40,000 a year living off of wrestling. That's kind of what I want out of comedy. And I think that's something that is built on the platform that I have right now, which is a pretty generous platform. Like I have a pretty strong YouTube channel, and I'm caught up in the sludge of the algorithm or whatever you call the thing. Like I don't have to try to attract attention, which is something that I got out of 80% luck and 80% of just throwing things out there to get people's attention. But like I have that platform now. So what I want to do is, now that people are coming in a general modest amount, I'm just going to keep producing content that I like, that's my identity, and hope that one of these things will win the lottery, and then structure everything I have on my online platform to point towards everything else I have. So let's say a video of me showing my dick goes viral or whatever. There'll be a call to action in that will go to my email list. And then my email list would point people towards my Twitter or whatever. And so everything becomes all integrated. And I think that comes from back when I had that pause where like I would do the things at the club, and then people are like, well, I don't know where you're going to go after this. When I started pausing and not doing a billion open mics in a week, I really slowed down. And at the same time I was building this community access TV show, I was also like reading a crap load about marketing, which most stuff about marketing is garbage. But if you could kind of just get the general basics of it, it just kind of helps you. And if you can kind of see good examples of how marketing works, then it kind of helps you as a comedian, because that's what we're doing. We're selling a brand.
Yep.
And if you figure out how to sell a brand, then you're good. So like right now, everything for me is about just, in marketing terms, there's this thing, Google it at home. It's called AIDA, ADIA or whatever. It's attention, interest, desire, action. And it's this thing that's shaped in the funnel. If you just Google any of that stuff, like that's the general principle of marketing. And for me, everything I build is about improving one part of that 4-letter acronym. Yeah.
Now, do you have a marketing background? Is that your day job? Or are you a full-time
I used to
comedian?
work for porn, and I did spam for a porn company. That was my job. And there I learned how SEO works. Do you know about that or no?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. SEO is search engine optimization. It's basically how well you can trick Google into giving you as the top result. I learned a lot about SEO. I learned a lot about typing as fast as I can. I also have a background in doing community organizing, and in there is, not to compare it to marketing because it's good, unlike marketing, which is evil. Inside of community organizing, they're really big on the idea of call to action. You don't do nothing unless you tell somebody to do something afterwards, you know? And I think that and just what I'm generally interested in kind of led me into learning about marketing. And I think whatever works in my head, I think I just am more receptive to understanding how marketing works compared to like what I see in a lot of comedians. Whereas other people might have other talents. That's just what I feel is one of my talents.
No, I agree. And that's the thing. That's why this show is called the Comedypreneur Show. So it's the word comedy, comedian, and then entrepreneur together, because you're a brand, right? You want to sell
Right.
yourself. You want to get people to come see you, to buy your products, to watch your videos, all that stuff. So you have to be a brand. You have to go out there and kind of be an entrepreneur of your own, because the clubs at one point could dump you. People could not like
Yeah.
you. You know, you get burn a relationship with a booker or whatever. But if you have your own brand, you have your own following, you can do your own shows. You can, you know, if you decide you wanted tomorrow to do a show in your apartment, you could, right? Because you have a fan base or an email base or whatever, because you built your brand. You become a comedy entrepreneur or a comedypreneur, which I know is like a weird term, but I came up with it one day and then everyone liked it. And so there we go.
I've been seeing in New York City, and you know, honestly, from my friends in Orlando, um, they've been slowly figuring out ways to monetize having a comedy show outside of the club
Yep.
ecosystem. And I think that's, first of all, important because we, you know, I started in 2010 when like Louis C.K. was becoming the big thing. And especially the big thing was like Mark Maron. That's kind of how I got into comedy, was listening to all these like How I Did It stories. And those stories of the comedians who came up in the 90s talking about like their success, their success was usually attached to success through the clubs. And so I think that's what we think of as the default of what stand-up comedy is. Whereas if you walk like 10 miles back, my cat's being my cat in my background, but
I love it.
if you walk like 10 feet back from comedy, a comedy club is just a bar with a weird middle manager in it. There's no reason for a comedy club. There's nothing special about a comedy club. There's nothing special about comedy club ownership. And there's nothing special about being selected to perform at a comedy club says nothing about your talent, your validity as a comedian, your merit of your abilities. It just says that you have whatever a comedy club middle manager likes. I think now that comedians have these pretty open, democratic things such as social media and promotional tools, it's really hard, and I don't think we're fully there yet, but I think that comedians can start monetizing comedy on their own. Maybe you can't make a full-time living off of it, but I know people who make like $200 off of a bar show. And I think what I want as a comedian, as a member of a creative community, is to slowly start disseminating more skills out to comedians and trying to get it out there, just making it so freaking easy to, if you're a smart kid and you pay attention and you're not some monster of ambition, you're just a person most people who are creative and really smart, there's a lot of people who are creative and really smart who also don't have that lizard person drive to like just do whatever it takes to be successful. And the latter category deserves to be seen. It's just harder for them to kind of get footing, just because if you're not a rocket ship of ambition, it's just hard for you to get out there.
Right.
And I think just having good skills on knowing how to build a good bar show really goes a lot. And also maybe how to build a good community helps a lot as well. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, that's what I did when in LA, you know, we have all the clubs or whatever, but they can be oversaturated. It can be hard to get in or whatever.
Yeah.
And I started doing, and then they don't pay a lot of comedians. You know, most comedians get a drink ticket, or if they're lucky, they'll get a couple bucks if they have, you know, credits on TV or whatever.
Yeah.
So I started doing my own shows out of different places so that I could pay comedians, because I felt like this is an art form that needs to be paid. Like, it's a lot of effort and work that goes into doing stand-up comedy. Like, people think like, oh, you just get up and do your 5 minutes, your 10 minutes, whatever it is, and that's easy. You just talk, but that's not the case. There's so much behind the scenes work. And then everyone was asking me about it. So I ended up writing a book on how to produce comedy shows I call it for fun and profit. So
right.
And that's the whole point is there doesn't need to be gatekeepers. Comedy clubs don't need to be the gatekeepers. We can create our own communities. We can create our own shows. We can help pay people. We can help make this beneficial for everyone. And that's the whole point. That's what I love. I love your thought process, man. We're on the same page there.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I Yeah, comedy clubs is just like, I mean, whatever, somebody could call it sour grapes, but I try to get, I mean, right before the coronavirus shutdown, I got my foot into the door of a comedy club. That's after like 7 years of trying. And I was appreciative to them, and they kind of got me as I was. But also, I really doubt, I hope they don't see this. It was just like, I don't think there was anything about me, my ability, or my talent that merited their attraction to me. And I think that also extends to all comedy clubs. There was another thing I was going to say. Oh, you know what it is? It's just like, I would spend a lot of energy trying to focus on getting in comedy clubs because that's like what the industrial validation is. And also being validated in that way, I think is a really genuine feeling, and it feels awesome. Like I felt that type of validation in other type of outlets, and it does help you. You know, like sometimes it feels like, you know, you're once you get on the other side of the fence, it's not as pretty as it is, but it kind of at least becomes this little thing where you can tell yourself, it's like, well, at least this, you know, person paid me to do this comedy thing. You know, that kind of helps you and helps you have confidence. That said, I have a lot of friends. I would spend a lot of time stressing about not getting into comedy clubs. And then 7, 8 years in, I would talk to my friends who are in comedy clubs, and they're getting exploited. I think just straight up. They're not, like you said, they're not getting paid. I remember I had a conversation with this friend, and he needed to go to the doctor. And I said, okay, you have to go to the doctor tonight. He's like, oh no, I can't I have to go do a spot. It's like, no, you have to go to the hospital. You have a problem. It's like, no, if I don't do my spot, I'll lose. They'll kick me off of the rotation. And then I asked him, how long have you been at this comedy club? And he said, 2 years. I'm like, how much have they paid you in these past 2 years? And he said, $50. He's been working for these people. He's been giving them their labor and justifying what this organization would sell. And he only got $50 out of it. And he's been here for 2 years, and he's never risen above the ranks because it's not, they don't count how many hours you work. They just decide who they like and who they don't like, and they let them in. And from that, I was talking to another friend about it who's at the same club, and this person was doing check spots, same thing, for like 3 years with these people, and he got kicked out of the rotation because he didn't want, the owner asked this person to drive a headliner comic for free without paying for his gas to some Connecticut shithead club. So it's just like, that really demystified clubs for me. And I think even like on all scales, as most comics, I think once you kind of get in, clubs are not as cool as they are. Like even talking to a credited comic who had like a late night spot, who would get regular spots at like a certain comedy club, they would underpay him a rate that was nowhere close to being competitive to what he would get paid for doing college gigs. Because they know he's just a New York comic who's not doing any travel gigs that weekend. So they can pay him what amounts to $600 a week for 5 sets in a week. And so it's just like, they're just not paying comics, which is, if they're not paying us, then we should go find where the money is. And I think self-produced shows and also producing your own online content and other online crap is like where the money is. But also, you know, most of us aren't going to make money, and that doesn't validate anything inside of comedy. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
No, I love it, dude. You and I are on the same wavelength. That's exactly what I feel. And that's why I always try to produce content to give to comedians. Like, hey guys, you don't need to be in this system. Create your own system. Create your own thing. Because Louis C.K. did that, right? He started selling all his own specials on his own website. He started doing his own thing, producing his own shows. Like when TV wouldn't buy his what was the show? The show in the bar. I forgot.
Oh, I was gonna say Amos and Andy, but that's nowhere close to what it was called.
Yeah, no. I forgot what it's
called.
called.
Talking about.
Yeah. So he self-produced it himself, right? He paid for everything. He did everything. He sold it on his own website. Like that's where we have to go, because honestly, while there are less gatekeepers, right? There's more, like Disney bought Fox and whatever. There's less gatekeepers to get in. That also means there's less opportunities commercially, corporately for us to grow. So we have to find our own brand, find our own way to build stuff. And that's really what I'm all about. I love, that's the thing that I saw about you, is that you have this, I don't want to say renegade, but kind of like this, like, you know what, and not libertarian, but like this very like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do my way, and people can hate it or people can love it, and I don't care. I'm making my own thing, and I'm being true to my art form. That's a vibe I got from you.
I think part of it is also like I mean, I don't even think it's like a thing that is, it's a pretty neutral attribute as opposed to a positive attribute. Like I just have a fuck you relationship to authority, and not in a punk rock way, in a way that if I'm in a classroom and there's a teacher and the teacher's offering something to me, like I just lose it because that's just not my comfort level. That said, what is a comfort level that I don't think is more in the background of what I do creatively and the actions I take on my public platform is the idea that we're all members of a community, and comedy, if you're doing comedy as a creative thing, you're a part of a community and you have responsibilities in that community, and you're strengthened if you play within, if you contribute within that community. I mean, the only time we're ever alone as comics is when we're on stage. Comedy is a very group thing, and open mic is not about one person. You can't have if comedy was just about the individual and, you know, rising on your own, open mics would not work. Like every successful comedian that we see after open mics started really proliferating, which I think it's kind of a relatively new thing. I mean, they've been around forever, but I think open mics, as we understand them, as like a shitty place where you throw your name in a bucket, has only been around since 2008, as far as I can understand, because before then it was all bringer shows is how you kind of got big, or the late night shows where you wait and then they'll put you up on stage. But doing a bringer show at doing a open mic at a shitty bar is pretty new for comedy. And that's built on a community. It's a bunch of 20 people getting together in a room saying like, we're all going to focus on each other and trying to get better at our art. And I think something that is like a midterm goal for me is just like disseminating more tools and kind of building more networks of how to get stuff out there on how to like build a good local scene. You know what I mean? I think it'll be great resources that were easily discoverable, easily shared on how to build a good local scene inside of New York City or inside of wherever you're at. And also inside of that, I wrote an essay about it, which kind of did well on Reddit and did its rounds online, is having good mental health skills and good mental health hygiene and be able to recognize it in other comics. Because I think people fucking will piss their pants over Nanette, but I thought she had a good point of like, you know, there's no reason you should have to suffer as an artist. If you're having like brain issues, go to a fucking doctor. It's like if you have a broken leg, you go to a doctor. You treat yourself, and you don't become better because of your mental illness. You become better in spite of your mental illness, and you do become better because you take care of yourself. So I think if comedians as a community had shared ideas and like little memes in their heads that lets them be able to take care of each other and have just really quick mental health first aid tools, that would be great. Like I kind of want, you know how comedians will say like local jokes get you local, what's that saying? I can't remember it. It's local jokes get you local spots or whatever. And, you know, get on stage as many times. We have all these little aphorisms that we share with each other. I kind of want to figure out ways just to kind of like sneak more mental health stuff into the comedian lexicon, because we're a really small community and stuff spreads pretty fast. I know what the fuck happens over in Denver, and I'll never go to Denver because only fucking losers live in Denver. I'm joking. Yeah.
Awesome. So I appreciate you taking time out doing this, because this is exactly what I want to do, is, you know, connect with other comedians, help share that stuff. That's what this whole thing is about. That's why I share information as well and make these videos, because I want to share information with everybody I possibly can, because if I learn something, it's not just for me. I'm not going to keep it myself and be like, this is only my information, I'm only going to get successful off of this. I want everyone to have it. So I appreciate that you have that same point of view, and I love that. Where can people find more about you? Where can they find you and watch your stuff?
My main hub is AmericasComic at Twitter. That's where you can follow me. If you go up on the YouTube search bar, look for John Field Show. That's my YouTube channel. I do right now, like the premise of the channel is I go back and forth between weird, quick sketches and video essays. I want to go back to my community access show, but I'm just waiting for a while. I want a bigger platform before I go back to that community access show. Also, I'm on the platform Byte. You guys remember Vine a couple of years ago? The guy who made Vine made Byte, and it's not exactly Vine, but it's like the greatest fucking... Okay, imagine TikTok, but it didn't have any asshole teenagers on it. Like, that's what the platform is. It's less than 5 months old of a platform, and it's growing. And my screen name on there is AmericasComic. If you watch my videos, I get paid to make them. So, yeah, if you're a comic, get on there. They pay you to make stuff if they like you. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And everybody, thanks for watching. Go to John. I'll put John's stuff in the link below. Go there, subscribe, watch his stuff. He's great. If you like Eric and Andre, that's the vibe I got on some of those. That's like what this, I don't know if that's your intention, but that's what I got out of it. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So very much so. Watch his stuff. I'll link everything in there. I'll put his Twitter, all that stuff below. And thank you again so much, John, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it as well. Have a good one.
Thank you.